Have you ever wondered how an AI actually comes up with an answer when you ask it a question? Does it think like we humans do, or is it simply recalling answers? Recently, researchers at Anthropic did something really cool. They invented a special kind of AI microscope that lets us truly see how large language models think. Today, let's talk about this exciting research discovery. Imagine when you ask Claude a simple question, such as, what is the capital of the state where Dallas is located? What happens inside it? Does it simply recall the answer, or is it actually thinking? Anthropic researchers have created a special kind of AI microscope that allows us to get a glimpse. This microscope works similarly to how neuroscientists study the human brain by precisely locating and modifying specific areas of neural activity to understand their function. In AI research, researchers can precisely observe and modify the internal states of the model, thereby understanding how it works. Researchers found that Claude does not simply memorize answers. Instead, it performs multi-step reasoning. First, it activates the concept of Dallas is in Texas, then connects to the knowledge that the capital of Texas is Austin. This is similar to how humans think, combining different pieces of information to reach a conclusion. To verify this, the researchers conducted an interesting experiment. They artificially replaced the concept of Texas with California, and the model's output immediately changed from Austin to Sacramento, which is the capital of California. This experiment clearly demonstrates that the model is indeed performing multi-step reasoning rather than simply recalling answers. Even more surprisingly, the researchers found that this reasoning process is not linear, but involves multiple concepts activating simultaneously and influencing each other, ultimately forming a coherent answer. In the field of poetry creation, Claude has demonstrated surprisingly capable abilities. Researchers initially wanted to prove that the model does not plan ahead, but instead discovered that it actually does. For example, when writing rhyming poetry, Claude would think of possible rhyming words. Before starting to write the second line, let's look at a concrete example. He saw a carrot and had to grab it. His hunger was like a starving rabbit. When writing a second line, Claude needs to satisfy two conditions simultaneously. It must rhyme with grab and convey a reasonable meaning. Why grab a carrot? Researchers found that before starting to write the second line, Claude was already thinking about possible rhyming words, such as rabbit and habit. When researchers artificially suppressed the concept of rabbit, Claude naturally switched to another rhyming word, habit. When the concept of green was injected, Claude would write a reasonable but non-rhyming sentence ending with green. These experiments demonstrate that Claude not only plans ahead, but can also flexibly adjust its plans. Researchers also discovered that this planning ability improves as the model size increases, suggesting that planning capability may be an important feature of large language models. In mathematical calculations, Claude demonstrates in unique strategies. Research has found that Claude uses multiple parallel computation paths. One path calculates a rough answer. Another path precisely determines the last digit of the sum. For example, when calculating 36 plus 59, Claude uses two calculation paths simultaneously. One path quickly estimates the answer to be around 90. The other path precisely calculates the unit's digit 6 plus 9 equals 15, then combines this information to arrive at the final answer 95. This parallel computation strategy is somewhat similar to how humans do mental arithmetic, but not exactly the same. Researchers also found that this computational strategy becomes more complex as the difficulty of the problem increases, indicating that Claude can adjust its computational strategy based on the characteristics of the problem. Interestingly, when asked how it performs calculations, Claude describes the standard carry algorithm rather than the internal strategy it actually uses. This is similar to how we might learn a skill but cannot accurately describe the learning process. Claude's multilingual capabilities also exhibit interesting characteristics. Research has found that there are shared features between different languages, indicating the existence of some form of conceptual universality. The larger the model size, the higher the proportion of shared features between languages. Claude 3.5 Haiku shows more than twice as much as smaller models. This suggests that Claude might be thinking in an abstract conceptual space and then translating into specific languages. For example, when asked about the antonym of small, whether the question is posed in English, French, or Chinese, Claude activates the same core conceptual features and then translates them into the corresponding language. This cross-linguistic shared feature suggests that Claude may possess a kind of language of thought, where it thinks in this abstract space and then translates the thoughts into concrete languages. Researchers have also found that this cross-linguistic shared feature exists not only in simple concepts, but also in more complex abstract concepts, indicating that Claude may have a fairly rich conceptual space. However, Claude's thought process also has some limitations. Research has found that sometimes Fabric has seemingly plausible steps to support its conclusions. On simple problems, such as calculating the square root of 0.64, the model provides faithful reasoning processes. But on difficult problems such as calculating the cosine of large numbers, the model may fabricate answers. This reminds us that although AI models appear intelligent, their thinking processes may not always be reliable. In terms of safety, the study found some interesting phenomena. Refusing to answer is Claude's default behavior, which helps prevent it from providing incorrect or harmful information. When the model has sufficient knowledge on a topic, the known answer feature activates and suppresses the default refusal circuit. But when asked about unknown entities, the model refuses to answer. Although this mechanism is not perfect, it does provide a certain level of safety. The researchers also studied the so-called jailbreak phenomenon, which refers to attempts to bypass the model's safety restrictions. They found that once the model starts a sentence, it is under pressure from grammatical coherence and semantic consistency. Even if the model detects that it should refuse to answer, these features compel it to continue completing the sentence. This reminds us that the safety mechanisms of AI systems need continuous improvement. Moreover, this study also has its limitations. Even with short, simple prompts, this method can only capture a small portion of the total computation performed by Claude. Currently, it takes several hours of manual effort to understand the observed circuits, even with prompts consisting of just a few dozen words. To scale up to support the thousands of words used in complex chains of thought in modern models, further improvements to the method are needed. Returning to our original question, do AI models really think? Through this research, we can see that although the thinking process of large language models differs from humans, they do exhibit complex internal working mechanisms. These mechanisms include multi-step reasoning, advanced planning, parallel computation, and other capabilities. However, these capabilities also come with limitations, such as potentially fabricating answers or being affected by syntactic pressure. Just as scientists use microscopes to observe cells, this study allows us to truly see for the first time how AI models think. Although there are still many unsolved mysteries, this research undoubtedly opens a new window for us to understand the internal world of AI. As the research deepens, we may be able to better understand how these complex systems operate, enabling them to better serve humanity. What are your thoughts on the thinking process of AI models? Feel free to share your ideas in the comments section. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.